Next on the news. A final farewell for a heroic FDNY firefighter killed in the line of duty in a massive house fire in Brooklyn. Also, Cardinal Timothy Dolan in Poland meeting the Ukrainian refugees driven from their homeland by the raging war with Russia. And
we're waiting for Melissa to come home.
Joy for the family of a Hispanic woman on death row who was granted a stay of execution. Plus, a Diocese of Brooklyn student grateful for his Catholic school career and how it helped him get into the Air Force Academy. I'm Christine Persichetti. This special edition of Currents News starts right now. Remembering a hero, friends and family fill a church in Queens for the funeral of firefighter Timothy Klein. The 31-year-old and one resident were killed. Several others were injured in a massive house fire in Canarsie. A hero who's being remembered for his big heart and brave acts.
It's a very, very sad day for the fire department today.
As black smoke billowed out of the house in Canarsie, Brooklyn, 31-year-old firefighter Timothy Klein was trapped inside. He was fighting the ferocious fire on the second floor when Acting Chief John Hodgins says the ceiling partially collapsed.
Our members worked feverishly and very hard under very difficult conditions to try to reach him. Unfortunately, they were not able to get to him in time.
Timothy lost his life doing the job that we ask of him every day.
A job he'd done well for the past 6 years. Mayor Eric Adams tweeted that Timothy's heroics were matched only by his heart. And if you take a look at his Facebook page, you can see just how big his heart was.
Look at the camera. Look at the camera. Oh my goodness, so cute.
Like the time he helped build a ramp so this little girl could get in and out of her house all by herself. Or the ramp he helped install for the Vietnam vet who needed it. And countless other projects he got to work on through the Fight for Firefighters Foundation.
I cannot describe the heartbreak of the FDNY today.
A heartbreak Timothy's firehouse is experiencing for the second time in 3 years. In 2019, firefighter Stephen Pollard was killed while on duty. Timothy was with him and actually spoke at his funeral.
Stephen Pollard died not thinking of himself, but trying to help others. We lost a true hero that night.
The same could be said for this Queens native, a son of the Diocese of Brooklyn who went to high school at Archbishop Malloy and to church at St. Francis de Sales. Timothy was also a member of the Knights of Columbus. In a tweet, Bishop Robert Brennan said, "Our hearts are broken," and went on to say, "Let us pray that Christ our risen Lord will receive him and grant him the fullness of life and peace and console his family and fellow firefighters." Timothy's funeral was Friday at the Church of St. Francis de Sales. The streets packed full as thousands of firefighters stood and saluted. And inside the church, packed pews of family members and friends. Among the FDNY, 3 firefighters who were badly hurt in the fire, one even leaving the burn unit so he could attend. Also there, the family of late firefighter Stephen Pollard, who Klein eulogized just 3 years before. In a series of eulogies that provoked both tears and laughter, those who knew him best said Klein was made to be a firefighter.
Timmy was a New York City firefighter and so very proud. He loved his job. His firehouse family was instant. You could say he was hooked from the beginning. He loved every one of you in his own way and would love telling many stories of everyone he shared his days and nights with at his new home in Canarsie.
Firehouse is truly a big family. If there is any way to help one another, we do it together. No matter what it is, it gets done together. No person in the FDNY could be a better example of that than Timothy Patrick Klein.
We know that we'll see Tim again and enjoy his friendship and love. And we pray for the strength to know that he's with us now, even from his place with God.
Klein is the 1,157th member of the FDNY to die in the line of duty. New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan is in Poland speaking to those affected by the war in Ukraine. His Eminence visited a local parish in Krakow that's being supported by the papal charity Aid to the Church in Need. The church has been taking in Ukrainian refugees. You can see Cardinal Dolan speaking to them here. The trip by the shepherd of the Archdiocese of New York and chair of the Catholic Near East Welfare Association is meant to show his solidarity with refugees and give them gifts from Catholics.
We want to just embrace them and say, we love you, we have not forgotten about you. We want to pray with you, we want to encourage you, and we want to help.
In that Vatican News interview, Cardinal Dolan said he may even cross the border into Ukraine if they can. Cardinal Dolan has a jam-packed trip this weekend. Here are some of the highlights. On Saturday, he'll visit a tent chapel and makeshift child care facility at a Polish railroad station. On Sunday, besides having Mass with the Greek Catholic Curia, Cardinal Dolan will visit a supply facility where necessities for refugees such as food and medicine are being distributed. On Monday, Cardinal Dolan will visit a Poland-Ukraine border crossing, and on Tuesday, His Eminence will meet with those at Caritas Poland who have been helping refugees since the invasion began. For full coverage of the New York Cardinals trip, be sure to stay with Currents News and the tablet newspaper. We'll bring you up-to-date information all along Cardinal Dolan's journey. And coming up later in this newscast, we take a look at one Catholic-run shelter that's helping those in the peripheries of the Ukrainian refugee crisis, the non-Ukrainians who have been forced to flee the country but are not getting the help they need from others. That's still ahead. A state senator is getting slammed over her support to remove New York City's Columbus Circle statue. Alessandra Biaggi was asked about the removal by a liberal LGBT Democratic club. Her response was, quote, "It should come down, and I have advocated for moving Italian heritage celebration to better representations." The head of New York's Italian-American group, Angela Vivolo, was stunned, saying, quote, "Senator, it is time to drop the hate and seek the truth." The city is now canceling plans to open a homeless shelter in Chinatown. According to a statement by the Department of Social Services, the future facility will now move to an area with fewer services and shelters for the city's homeless. The previously planned 49-bed site was slated to be a city safe haven. It is specifically meant for individuals who may be resistant to accepting help or not best served by other homeless services. Last week, Mayor Eric Adams promised to build 1,400 safe haven beds to remove homeless encampments and subway riders. For those in need and struggling to find a place to live, Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens just opened a new set of apartments dedicated to the Holy Father. The Pope Francis apartments at Loretto are also named for the former church that stood there, Our Lady of Loretto. They provide green housing for senior citizens. Among the features included in the interfaith effort are sustainable technologies like solar energy panels. They also feature Catholic Charities services like on-call nurses and health counseling and Buddhist and Zen-inspired meditations. One of the more than 60 residents of the building shares how he feels about his new home.
I just feel very grateful. I'm just so happy. I want to scream and shout.
Pope Francis housing here shows us that you don't have to cut back in order to be faithful to your principles. Here we're living according to our principles and producing a great work and really enhancing the lives of many people.
That's really what the church is called to do. You look at the 25th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel. Did you welcome me when I was a stranger? The work we do with immigrants. Did you feed me? The work we did at Catholic Charities. And providing a home.
Catholic Charities says this building in the Brownsville area of Brooklyn is almost 50% full and filling up fast. But another building in Astoria will be dedicated in June. Melissa Lucio was set to be put to death on Wednesday for the murder of her toddler. But now a court has put a stop to it, pausing the execution while new evidence that could result in a new trial is reviewed. It's a huge relief for many Catholic leaders and her family. Tears of joy from Melissa Lucio's mother and sisters as they hear the news that their loved one's life will be spared for now.
We're waiting for Melissa to come home.
With just days before her scheduled execution, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals issued a stay that might give Lucio a chance to prove that she did not kill her 2-year-old daughter Mariah Alvarez in 2007. The 52-year-old got emotional when hearing she has a chance to live.
Oh my God!
leaders are applauding this day. Bishop Daniel Flores of Brownsville, Texas, said in a statement that creating a less violent, more peaceful world requires that we continue to foster a sense of justice that does not include the taking of more lives. Let us pray and work for an end to the death penalty.
It's a really tough time for all of us right now.
Lucio's son, Bobby Alvarez, says they were in the middle of moving that day. His mother was packing in their second-floor unit when Mariah, who was unsteady on her feet due to a mild physical disability, fell down the stairs.
She fell all the way down. When I first stepped up there, all the way down here.
She didn't show signs of severe injury, but became lethargic and 2 days later, unresponsive.
We immediately called the ambulance, and from there, got taken away. It was just a horrible night.
Court documents show Texas Rangers interrogated Lucio for hours about extensive bruising and suspected child abuse. This clip of the interview was provided by Lucio's lawyers.
How are you not cold-blooded? How are you going to change our minds and prove to us that you're not a cold-blooded kid?
I don't know how to change their minds.
Well, you can start with telling us the truth.
It wasn't going to stop until she told the interrogators what they wanted to hear.
Lucio's lawyers say after hours of questioning, Lucio was pressured into agreeing that she was responsible for her daughter's injuries, but never said she killed her child. Her defense team says new evidence includes testimony the jury never heard from witnesses saying Lucio did not abuse her child. 5 jurors have said with new evidence they feel Lucio should have a new trial.
Mariah's death was a tragedy, not a murder. And the reason that we're seeing the jurors come forward, the reason that we're seeing such an outpouring of bipartisan support is because people recognize that Melissa Lucio is innocent.
The next step is for the trial court to review the evidence to decide if a new trial is warranted. And that process could take months, and Lucio will remain in prison while it happens. A federal court has ordered cases brought against a Texas pro-life law be dismissed. The ruling eliminates all legal challenges brought against the law. The Texas Heartbeat Act bans abortions once doctors can detect a fetal heartbeat, usually around 6 weeks. One pro-life group is calling the court's decision a substantial pro-life victory. Over in Oklahoma, lawmakers there approved a pro-life law similar to the one in Texas. This measure allows private citizens to bring civil lawsuits against abortion providers. The state's Republican governor, Kevin Stitt, says he will sign the legislation. Once signed, the measure will go into effect immediately. There's a lot more news headed your way. It was supposed to be dropped in May. Now the Supreme Court is debating Title 42. So what's next for the public health rule at the border? Also, Pope Francis sharing details about his knee problems with pilgrims at the Vatican, and how a Catholic-run shelter is helping Ukrainian refugees, even if they are not native to the war-torn country.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
The U.S. Supreme Court is now wrestling with the issue of whether to drop Title 42. A lower court ruling this week is preventing the rule from being dropped. The Biden administration wanted it dropped before the end of May. The public health rule at the border was put in place during the Trump administration. It allows for fast expulsion of migrants over concerns about the spread of COVID-19. Hispanic Catholic leaders met with several U.S. senators to discuss immigration reform. They pushed for bipartisanship when it comes to taking steps towards reforming legislation that will provide a pathway to citizenship. The meetings were part of more than 24 that took place this past week between nearly 400 Hispanic Catholic leaders and the senators. The Hispanic leaders called the discussions fruitful. That effort coincided with the 6th National Congress of Hispanic Ministry in D.C., the 4-day gathering focusing on some of the pillars of the Hispanic community: family, youth ministry, social justice, and pastoral formation. Leaders from all over the country are basically picking up the ball after the pandemic, drawing on the conclusions of the 5th Encuentro back in 2018. If you remember, that was a huge gathering where church leaders and lay people discussed ways to strengthen the Hispanic community. The Diocese of Brooklyn played a huge role in the nationwide effort. Pope Francis has been keeping a close eye on the meeting all the way from the Vatican, and he had a special video message for those attending.
Los invito a reflexionar sobre la necesidad de ser cristianos que transformen las estructuras y puedan crear puentes en todos los sectores de la sociedad.
The Pope observed that in this time of war and pandemic, humanity needs to change its mentality away from schemes of war to focus on projects of peace. The Congress wraps up this Saturday. Pope Francis was up front with the pilgrims in St. Peter's Square Wednesday about his health issues.
I want to say that I'll have to greet you while seated because this knee of mine is not healing, and so I can't be on my feet for long periods of time.
The Holy Father seen at his general audience walking slowly and with assistance. This just a day after the Pope canceled all of his engagements due to his knee problem. The Vatican reports the Pope is suffering from gonalgia, which is a general term for severe knee pain. Dr. Andrea Campi, an Italian orthopedic surgeon, believes the issue could actually be coming from his hip.
In the case of the Holy Father, he can have pain in his knee, which is what all the news is talking about, a pain that could be caused by gonarthrosis. But in theory, it could also be caused from other sources, such as arthritis in his hip. This would be known as coxarthrosis, which can be bothersome at the hip level, but the pain can also extend downward toward the knee.
Dr. Campi says when this type of knee pain lasts only a short while, it can be treated with medication. In the Pope's case, however, he recommends surgery. Go to the peripheries. That has always been the Holy Father's call for Catholics since his pontificate started. Well, one Catholic-run shelter in Poland is doing just that, dealing with a lesser-known part of Ukraine's refugee crisis that's struggling to find support. The refugees who left the country but aren't Ukrainian. Erica Hill reports.
After fleeing the war in Ukraine, a chance to just be a kid.
They are drawing what they feel.
She says here she's grateful. Poland has welcomed nearly 3 million people since the war started, yet not everyone is greeted with open arms.
It's clear that we are more open for, those Slavic people, ethnic groups.
While Ukrainians arriving in Poland can stay for 18 months, work legally, and have access to health care and social services, non-Ukrainians can't. These 3 women knew they could help.
They have only 2 weeks to think about their next steps, and I can't imagine actually how to do it when you are a war refugee.
Overnight, they started a shelter for non-Ukrainian refugees run by KIK, a Catholic NGO in Poland. With space for 70 guests, they're turning people away daily.
And from the beginning, it's full.
Joel and Daniel, students from Nigeria, were studying management in Kyiv when the war broke out and were reluctant to leave.
It was fun for me, and I would rather love to go back to Ukraine. It was like that. It's a very good country.
They finally left 2 weeks ago and are now trying to figure out what's next.
We also try to support our guests in organizing their next steps. So sometimes it's a trip to other countries, but also we try to find flats or apartments, places to stay.
Volunteers, at least a dozen a day, keep the shelter running and help connect refugees to essential services. Among them, 27-year-old HALTED, an IT professional who fled Afghanistan 7 months ago.
I do anything that I can do. It's very good for me because I don't have any other job, and it's a better idea to spend time here.
This effort relies on donations, from clothing and toiletries to food and flowers. Even the space, which has now welcomed more than 500 people from 36 countries, is donated, a generous offer that runs out at the end of May.
That was Erica Hill reporting. The shelter's manager believes they will still be welcoming new refugees until the end of next year. Still to come on Currents News, he has a way of reaching out to the Catholic youth. The Rapping Bishop returns. We'll show you what event he showed up at and how a Diocese of Brooklyn student is crediting his Catholic school career for getting him into the Air Force Academy. The rapping bishop strikes again. Auxiliary Bishop Joseph Espaillat giving a few bars of Jay-Z's Empire State of Mind while at the Archdiocese of New York's Catholic Youth Day last weekend. The annual event gathers hundreds of teens for a day of inspirational talks, lively music, mass, and more. Bishop Espaillat made history as the youngest Catholic bishop ordained in the U.S. last March. All right, time is up. The tablet is no longer taking submissions for its Easter art contest, but we've got a preview of what's to come. This is just a sample of the nearly 300 pieces of artwork that poured in from students around the Diocese of Brooklyn. The tablet staff certainly has their work cut out for them with the judging. The award ceremony is next Monday. That's May 2nd, and Currents News will be there. We'll introduce you to the winners next week. We're also in the final stretch of the tablet's Great COVID Relief Fundraiser. Students who sell the most subscriptions to the tablet will get money back for not only themselves, but also for their schools. And that's not all. Every new reader you earn for the Brooklyn paper will get you that much closer to this year's grand prize of $3,000. If you're watching this on Friday, the contest officially ends at midnight, but subscriptions will still be accepted over the weekend. Now, if you don't know a student selling subscriptions, don't worry, you can still participate. Just go to thetablet.org/COVID Relief Fundraiser. There you can select the parish school of your choice. You could also extend your subscription if you're already a big fan of the tablet. Getting accepted to one of the 5 U.S. military academies is quite an achievement, but it was a stellar achievement for a Nebraska teen who got into all of them. 18-year-old Noble Rasmussen is about to graduate at the end of next month. Noble's parents say his drive to be the best is something he's always had. His push to aim high is now sending him to the Air Force. And he has this advice for other teens striving for their own success.
Stay strong, stay optimistic, and stay motivated. It just a little bit at a time and a day at a time is how you get through it.
Noble will head to the Air Force Academy this summer. And one of that teen's possible classmates could be a student from the Diocese of Brooklyn. Thomas Tong says his lifelong career in Catholic schools gave him the edge and drive he needed to follow his dream of flying high in the Air Force. When Thomas graduates from Xavier High School this year, he'll be entering the Air Force Academy, a goal only 10% of applicants can say they've achieved. While Thomas isn't Catholic, he says his Catholic education transformed his view of the world.
It gives you another perspective on life, and you can use parts of Catholic teaching to better yourself and better the way you live.
Thomas starts 6 weeks of boot camp at the Air Force Academy on June 23rd. He said he's hoping the family he found during his Catholic education he'll soon find again in the Air Force, and we wish him well. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. We leave you now with more of Bishop Espaillat's impressive performance at the Archdiocese of New York's Catholic Youth Day. Hope to see you again next time.